Welcome, friends. I'm Will Whitfield, and this is what will probably be the conclusion to our DAS to Blender series, revamped. I kind of forgot to make this last video when I made the other ones, but due to some demand, I'm going to go ahead and record it. Although I will note there have been some differences. I am currently using Blender 4.0. And then make note that I'm using the Diffeomorphic DAS importer version 1.7.3. One of the major differences is that when you use the certain version or higher, it will be split up into two sections: DAS setup and DAS runtime, but most of the functions will be the same. Also note for the tutorial, I will be using a couple of different plugins. One of the important ones will be the Auto Rig Pro, specifically for the remap functionality. And then as we go through, I'll note when I'm using something that's not native to Blender, other than, obviously our import files, BVH or otherwise. So let's go ahead and get started. Going off of our last tutorial, we imported a character. I don't have it here, but I'll re-import it. And I'm going to use the Easy DAS import option as we did before. And we're going to go to characters and find my character for. I want to use the same one I was using before, just for consistency. So it's been a while back. Wow. Tutorial character, and I'll keep these options the same. I noticed before the material method name will have changed since the last time we did a video, and we will need to use the FACS or FACS. This probably won't be supported on my version of the character. I'm importing Genesis 8.1 character, and I've tried this before and it didn't work. But FACS expressions, not necessary, but it's good to have for testing. And then I like to import body. You can do this part later, the DAS setup, but I like to do it now just to get it out of the way. And it'll be a few moments while the character imports. Alright, we are back and our character just imported. I don't think that error message is going to be too important. We might have covered this in our last video, but I just want to show how to set up the character to receive animations. Using the Auto Rig Pro, we will need it to be in a T pose instead of an A pose. So to do that, I'm not going to be very precise, but I'm going to get very close to a T pose. So we want to take this arm bone right here, the left shoulder bend, and we're going to do R for rotate, hit Z twice for the local Z axis, and I'm going to use a value of 45.61. Enter. Right shoulder bend, RZZ negative 45.61. I think I hit something by mistake. 0.61. There we go. Now for the legs, click the left thigh bend, RZZ 6. Enter. And then the same thing for the right thigh bend, RZZ negative 6. Enter. I'm going to hit Control Tab to get out of pose mode. What are these bones? Okay, that's a driver. That's kind of new. Shouldn't be an issue. So in order to keep this as our rest pose, we're going to go to the DAS setup section and go to corrections and click on apply rest pose, which will take a few moments to apply, or it can go very quickly and you'll know it's done. It will highlight all the parts of the body. And so just to test out our character, we'll go to DAS runtime and go to the last section of morphs. And if we don't already have our morph set up, we can go to DAS setup morphs and import them as needed, and it'll take a a couple minutes for those to import, but we did that earlier in the easy dash setup. So I just want to test out our character. Let's say let's do eye squint. Make sure the eyelashes follow the eyes. That's good. And then use one of the visings for the mouth. Let's do the OW. Make sure the facial hair follows the mouth, and that's good. If those don't work, we can do is click on the facial hair mesh if it doesn't move at all, and then I believe you hit shift click on the body, and you go to dash setup and do transfer shape keys, and it will transfer the keys from the body mesh to the facial hair or the eyelashes as necessary. Not going to do that here because it already works, but I just want to leave that tip with you. And then, you know, for body bends, make sure that the body can move. So that's good. So now we're ready to apply motions to the character. First we need a motion to actually apply. So I'm going to import a BVH file, some motion capture data from the intro of our tutorial series. There's a short video where I use this character to introduce the whole series. So I'm going to bring that motion into here. It was a BVH file I got from Access Studio with the motion capture that I did. But you can get this from anywhere, any other BVH file or FBX file. So I need to find out what I did with that. Okay, here we go. So this is the file. I just happened to name it CHR30, so I just determined myself that this is 30 frames per second, and I'll tell you a little bit later why that's important. So just know that our animation is 30 frames per second. These BVH files come in kind of big, so I'm going to scale it down to 0.01, and I think I can leave all the other values the same. Import BVH, and we see it's kind of relatively the size of our character. Now if I go to animation and hit A to select all the bones in that BVH file, I can see that it's about 2,500 frames or so. So I'm just going to go back to my layout and move my timeline up, scroll out, and I'm going to just increase my animation range. Even though I'm not going to render here, I'm just want to have that available. I'm going to scrub the timeline just to see how my BVH file behaves. More or less it behaves as I expect it to. And this has all the body animation but not the facial motion capture data, so I'll be doing that later. But I want to do this part first. So I'm going to go back to frame 0. Both of them are in a T-pose. And I need to use Auto Rig Pro. So I don't need this first section. I need the third section of remap. So with my source BVH file selected, I'll hit this dropper icon to select it as my source armature. And then I'll select the armature for my character and click here for the target. And now I will hit auto scale and then hit build bones list, and it'll attempt to match the bones from each character, but it only does a handful. So what you will need to do is go through and match each bone as appropriate. So like for example, I'll go for hips, I will search for hip and match those. And so the left arm on this armature, I'm going to go to pose mode and click on this. This is the left arm, so the upper part of the arm is called left arm. Within the dash character, go to pose mode. You have two bones here, so that's going to be an issue. So I'm going to use the upper one here. Same thing for the forearm. I'm going to use the upper one here, so forearm bend. And then same thing for the thighs. And the thighs, you have two bones, so I'm going to use the upper one there. So for example, if I was to do left arm, I would do L shoulder bend. And then for the forearm, I would do there we go, L forearm bend, and so on. And when you go through all this, I'm not going to type all these in now. When you do, you can export that, save it as a preset, and then import it for later use. I mean, generally, whether you're doing a male or female character, as long as it's the same generation, that one preset will apply. So I already have that as a preset, so I'm just going to import that. And I'll just scroll through here. So it's already set up for me with that import file, and I'll scroll through, kind of showing you the values that I used. And you can pause the video if you want to just take note of the values that I used. Okay, with that being said and done, I will go back up and hit retarget. And here's the play range I want to use. And I'll hit OK, and it'll take several moments or minutes for this remap to complete. Usually your Blender session will become unresponsive, and when it becomes responsive again, usually this window will disappear and the remapping is done, and your new armature will have keyframes. So I'll be back in a moment. So we are back, and our character now has the body animation now applied. So we're halfway through the process. But sometimes the animations may not match exactly, and that's because the motion for the arms and legs are split up again as two different bones. If I go to pose mode after the transfer, you see that it only highlights or selects the bones that matched up and leave unselected the ones that weren't used. So all the twisting and bending of, like, say, the left upper arm is split up in two different functions here. This bends while this twists the arm. So if I rotate this, this handles all the twisting, and this handles all the bending, whereas that both are controlled here. Now I can't do that here because there are bone constraints keeping me from doing so. So if your motion's way off, what we can do is try to turn off the constraints here by hitting the eye icon. So let me try to go to a part where it's kind of a little subtle but not too subtly done. So here I'll go even to just the hand as an example. I think that's the best, easiest one to see. So if I turn this off, you see there's a little bit of a difference in movement. Let's see if I go to a frame where it's a little bit more obvious. You see there's more twist if I turn off the limit rotation. So that is an option if your animation isn't as precise as you like it to be. But either way, you're probably going to do some cleanup. But that is just a tip of something you may need to do. So with that being done, the last part is to add our facial motion capture data. And to do that, first thing I need to do is make sure I'm back on frame 0 because we need to start the animation on the frame that we need it to. Because I basically started the... So this, in this animation, just to tell y'all a secret, I'm basically starting... This frame right here is actually me clicking on a computer to start my motion capture, while simultaneously clicking on my phone to start the motion capture data with my iPhone. That's what's happening here, and then I'm moving into place to do my motion capture. And then here I'm clicking the phone to turn off the facial motion capture, and then I'm walking back to turn off the computer for the body motion capture. So in my case, I started both at the same time, so I can start at frame 0, more or less. Anyways, to do the facial motion capture, I go to DAZ runtime and go back to my morph section and go to the FACS section and import either a facecap file or a live link file. I have a couple of videos of doing one or the other, so I'm not going to go over how to actually work those applications on the iPhone. Just when you have your motion capture data available on your computer, you can click on one of these. I'm using live link file, and I'm going to look for my motion capture. There's tutorial intro. Here we go. And so for the options, I don't want to do a new action. I don't want to do a new action because that will overwrite or possibly overwrite the motion capture data that I already have. So I just want to lay this on top of what I already have. So I'm going to unclick that. Also, I have motion capture data for the head rotation and everything, the neck, upper neck, and abdomen already from my body motion capture. I don't want to use the head rotation from a facial motion capture because I already have some. Now, if I was just doing facial, I would leave this checked, but in my case, I want to uncheck it. I do want to leave eyes and tongue checked. And this may take a few moments depending on how many keyframes you have. So now we are back, I believe. And you see I already have the eyes are already moving. So if I scroll along, now you can see we have mouth movement and eye movement along with our body motion capture. So that's how I combine body motion capture and facial motion capture. And sometimes you do have to shift and move things around to line them up, but in my case it lined up pretty well. Again, in both cases my motion capture files were both 30 frames per second, so it wasn't hard to match everything up. But that might not always be the case. Also, you might have, let's say for example, the body was 24 frames per second, but your facial motion capture data was 30. So to get down from 30 to 24, you need to be going at 0.8 times speed. So what I would do for my my body, if I go to, let's say, let me click on the eyes and the facts are the parts that are moving. So here are I'm gonna click on my eyes, and you can see that the facts are a little bit shorter than 2500 frames. That's because we turned the phone off before we turned off the rest of the computer, so it ends a little bit earlier. Let's say for example this was only 24 frames per second instead of 30, and this will be somewhere down here. We will only select our facts and our eyes, which I don't see the eyes here, but that's okay. And then we would scale it at frame 0. We would scale it down to 0.8 to change it to 24 frames per second. and you can scale up same way. You just got to figure out the math. But anyways, that is how we do motion capture with the body and face at the same time. Hopefully this will help people out. If there's a better way, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.